Marcus has an extraordinary CV, and it is extremely lengthy. 9 solo exhibitions, the most recent 2015 in Devonport Regional Gallery, and also 6 group exhibitions in 2016 alone, working in Victoria, Canberra, Katoomba, Sydney, Sculpture by the Sea in Bondi. Marcus has also worked in Toyama in Japan, and obviously many other festivals around Australia, the USA, Philadelphia. It goes on, an extensive, very impressive CV. Marcus is going to talk about the making of his art, and Marcus is also quite prepared for you to ask questions on the way through if you need to clarify something. Marcus.
Thanks, Peter. Hi everyone. I have about 100 slides, 105 or so I thought, well, let's try and keep it as a dialogue rather than me just saying, oh, here, this is what I do, here's some pictures. If you can sort of think of things along the way that you might think, I waffle and, I need to explain more, please tell me to stop. Do we have 1 hour?
You do.
So we could...
Slightly less now, Marcus.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, we can work with, like, why do you make that, or how do you make that? Or, I think if we can sort of try and take my attention away from just talking to the picture, that would be lovely. So I have these, the start of my work as well as what I'm doing now with the slides. I'm covering since 1984 really how I went to an art school and then went to the Hobart College of the Arts afterwards, and then went through to become sort of not so much a furniture designer, which is what I majored in, through to wanting to be out in the public realm, making more political statements with what I do, and then to the last 18 years really I've just been making outdoor artworks, and I find it very hard to do interior work again. So where do we go? Sorry, we should be running pretty smoothly I think from now. Yeah, this is the form of work that I was working in just about as I left art school in Tasmania. Like, I did 5 years of undergraduate art school, so a lot of it was to do with learning the skills. I'd already been in an Otago Polytech environment where I really understood bronze casting, printmaking, painting, a lot of lino cutting and ceramics. I worked across quite a range. We did theatre, set design, we worked in all these different ways, but I found that I was actually really drawn to the field of carving early on. And sorry, I was going in the wrong direction, I just learned my skills really through experimenting. Feel of it. This is a family farm in New Zealand. Sorry, it's such an old photo. Built a little house with a chainsaw mill. Did the hippie thing as a boy. Wanted to sort of experiment in terms of like relating to the land. And so I'm taking you through this. That house there with my sister. We really did explore just the raw material. We were in it. We felt the real, hardship of life on the land, and got to explore, 5 years making things that didn't last and all that sort of thing. Then the Polytech was more, technical. I did 2 years of a 3-year diploma, and then I read. This is in Otago. I read about this school of art in Hobart, Tasmania. I'm only a Kiwi guy. I'm sort of 18 or 20, and living on the land, a hippie sort of thing, got into an art school and went to the library, read about art being camouflaged as furniture and things like this in the library in Dunedin, and heard about Hobart School of Art, that there was a lot more to do with furniture design. Started recognising the power that these symbols can have, and I really just grew. That was an art school piece, and telling stories, volcanoes and things like that. And then I think the transition from art school, this is my 5th year of art school, I was making percussion instruments with a fellow student, and we ended up getting to a stage where we could make these drums and take them to Millennium Festival and sell them, vans full of them at once. And we were just really having a fantastic time doing this sort of. I wasn't the player as much, I'd be up there doing the playing, and all these people were doing this at me, and I was going, I'd like to be in my shed. So it didn't actually last for me. There was about 10 years where we were fully employed. There was like this 9-month gestation for a drum. You had to wait, and they'd get it around. And this is all from the waste in the forests of the logging coops down there in southern coops near Jeeveston and such. So we'd go in there with the chainsaw, carve out the hollow. There'd be solid, very freshly cut trees, and we'd learn about the different drying capacities of each species and become sort of quite technically proficient with a kiln that I was running, a dehumidification kiln, and so the whole process was quite technically advanced, with a goat skin from the Flinders Ranges stretched across the top, and off you go, whack into it. And they were, it was a real, a good 10 years where these drums were very popular, and so I'd be doing my sculpture after I'd be doing a stint of building these drums. I'd be making things like that Grecian amphora form that was completely hollow as well. You can see I'm stringing this chainsaw on the back of a sapling off that's like a 36-inch bar chainsaw. It's huge, and it's going deep into that piece of wood. You can't sort of control that very well if you're holding the whole weight of it as well. So I had it sort of dangling like a yo-yo, as Richard Flanagan used to say, dangling, and so I could control that. And the wood had to be taken down to about a 20mm wall thickness before it would be able to be stable. And like the ceramics that I've been learning in the Otago Polytech, it was going to shrink up to 15-20% in the tangential proportions. So you had to work on all those sorts of proportions while you were carving it, knowing that it would shrink, and knowing that you were going to be carving off it. Whereas longitudinally, the wood grain doesn't shrink, and so there's all this sort of technical stuff which I grew into. I really enjoyed it. You can see I'm hollowing from the base as well, camping in these forest coops for about 3 weeks at a time. The hot scrub was fantastic. It was also a good pillow, sassafras gave you the best dreams, and then you can imagine you didn't need to buy a toilet paper or anything. It was fantastic living out there. And so changing this place from an industrial wasteland into just a playground, actually, as a sculptor. It's like this, I used to call it my Italian marble quarry, and so we could be out there doing this kind of work. So there's one other fellow and I that ended up, I think the best commission we got was for Ian Clueworth in Synergy at the time, who's now running Taikos. He would go to Japan and work with the traditional troops in Japan on Sado Island, and then come back to Australia with the traditional taiko format and turn it into a contemporary Australian story. And so he would, that was the drum shell, which took quite a lot of drying out and seasoning, and then 2 great bullskins from down in the Geeston Valley, stretched across that, and then took that up to Sydney. And so that was, I think, that's like the transition coming out of art school for me is such a huge thing, and I think with all these institutions we should really focus on how students are led from their, cerebral life, and how we can get people to be taken on by industry or whatever format. It could be theatre, it can be, Mona is doing something in that regard down in Hobart, and I wonder whether people are actually able to extend beyond Mona employment. But for me, this was in the arts. It gave me, more technical and business prowess to be in a small business selling percussion instruments around the world, or around Australia mainly. And then, I'd have time to work with this, more sculptural. And this is a bit like the story of Sisyphus, I guess. And I was always interested in those ancient Grecian messages that would come through their various sculptures. Sorry. And that describes where I've come from really, is the New Zealand format of being able to carve what your lineage is, or carve what your real message is, knowing that this is indelibly placed into a material. The making of sculpture came for me from that, visiting this in the Auckland Museum and seeing what these other cultures have that last, something that will be there for a long time into the future, beyond my life, whether it's wood or cast bronze or stone or whatever else. So I've been making, and I'm making on that level that started when I was just on this family land with an little old chainsaw that used to break down all the time. You do those things, you make the mistakes, and I think that's probably where I've been fortunate, is that I've been, I haven't been prepared to accept a teacher in a way. I haven't gone up to somebody else and said, hey, can I learn from you? I'm a terrible listener. I don't know if that's a good mark of a designer or what, but I tend to, think it's better just not to talk, actually. I think it's better to just get on with it and try stuff. So that was one of my bigger exhibitions I took up to Circular Quay when Object Galleries was still in Circular Quay. And I didn't sell many of these. It was like really hard work to actually find a market, like pretty unique kind of stuff. And it's just weird, Why is somebody, an investor, going to come and buy that? I don't know. It just didn't happen anyway. Then an American guy on his yacht in the Bahamas decided to cell phone me, and I think Craft Arts magazine was quite a big change in my career. Put in a few photos of, I think this group of work, or one earlier. But anyway, this collector in the Napa Valley ended up buying 6 of my works in one go, and that's where I changed from being a drum maker, say, as much as being a sculptor. And from then, this is still interior scale work. I've just wanted to go into the public realm. I felt like I was beautifying this American guy's collection. He was bringing people through and, saying, oh, how lovely all this, obviously hand-wrought, and, somebody's been working really hard, and somebody's been doing all this, I don't know, it's like, to me, the motivation behind doing work like this lost it after I'd achieved a certain prowess with it. Even the piece on the lying down, that works as a shard on a wall, and I made that roughly. I chiseled it really quickly. I used just a flat builder's chisel for a lot of it, and then I rubbed pigment through it, and it was describing the modern age. There's aeroplanes and lawnmowers and dishes and computers and things like that in there. So referencing the past cultures and how our world is, and then what we're doing with our raw material, breaking up logs and such. It was all in there, and it meant a lot to me. However, if I couldn't sell it to somebody that was going to share it in a public realm, have it so that it was exposed to a wider public, it didn't feel whole. It didn't feel like I was doing the full circle. I wasn't sustaining myself. My audience wasn't who I hoped. However, this one's in Piper's Brook, I think, over in sorry, I can't quite think which winery now. I think it's Piper's Brook, yeah. So that one lives on for the public to visit, and it's great. But I was sort of disappointed when I ended up finding that I was being collected, or these were collected as icons of somebody doing it hard, working hard, and using their traditional hand skills. And the American people that I was visiting who had bought my work, the whole collector's market over there didn't feel like it was a healthy statement or a healthy place for my work to end up as a full statement. So yeah, I started having, while I was working in this is a funerary urn that the lace piece comes away, and so the fellow who did commission this as a one-off has his mother's ashes on the mantelpiece inside the carved bowl inside. So that piece is, maybe it's say 450 sort of square, sort of in plan view. But yeah, the feeling of this was special. This really gave me, the reason for making sculpture. That was, making something that was going to be commemorated as something that was going to last for many years, and it was, with the date around it of her life, plus her name over there, it was so vital, I guess, that the work speaks in a long period of time, whereas this piece, I loved making it. It was, probably one of the only things I've done that's completely representational of a what is that, a ringtail. But at the same time, I felt like I'm just making another beautiful thing for somebody to, pat or, So this is a work that I made for the Great Western Tears Sculpture Trail, which is still there as far as I know. If you walked on the way to Split Rock, it's up in the Ender Valley. So I walked up to this log out in the scrub. I didn't know who owned it or anything like that, who owned the land, but it was obviously Clearfell Coop. And so I was camping there, carving away, and this guy walked up to me and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm making an artwork, a sculpture. No, you can't do that. And I said, well, look, the wood's just going to get rotten. It's just, being wasted. No, we planted, and they planted some trees nearby, some pine trees, and the guy happened to be from the paper mill, local paper mill down there. So it wasn't forestry land. I thought that it was, the land that I could have access to with a firewood licence. You go and you get a licence from Forestry Tasmania, and you can collect as much firewood as you like. And so, you have to beat the firewood cutters to these sorts of logs, and then if there's not much access, then it's easier. And then if it is right by the track, then you've got to just camp there so nobody starts cutting into your sculpture half done. So anyway, I'm working away, and this guy is pretty officious. And then I don't know how it worked, but in the end he said, all right, you can work here as long as you don't make a mess. That's where it ended up. I think he might have been thinking I was going to leave Coke bottles, or I don't know what it was. Yeah. So that to me is I called it Creature Being. It's 5 metres long and 2 metres in diameter. It's sort of the shape of a Cornish pasty, sort of triangular prism, and then it comes out. It's not very well described there. I don't think I've got a better one, sorry, but anyway, it's designed as a reference to the megafauna age in that sort of mountainous area up in the Great Western Tiers. It's completely foggy. It's, you've got those cockatoos and screeching, and you can just imagine these megafauna fumbling around through the landscapes. And so I'm really interested to get a photo of it. It's probably 17 years since I put it in there. And it will have quietly broken down a little bit. The eucalypt, from looking at the way the stumps from the logging era, they seem to last a long time. So I'm not sure how far that chainsaw filigree will have gone, whether it would have caved in or not. And it's on a big pile of rocks, and I'm sure it's looking delightful now. And it's really only on the side of a little bushwalk that somebody would chance upon and go, and walk on. It's not like you're going to get, you probably get it on Instagram. I don't know. Yeah. So this one was one of the first Arts Tasmania commissions that I received. It's over at the East Ulverston Primary School now, and I just feel like it worked. I went through so many different formats with the clientele, and I found that Arts Tasmania for my career were fantastic in the early stages, where I could really, there was a process, a format unfolded, or maybe a format that had a pro forma where Arts Tasmania had been running for quite a few years before, and I knew what the brief was, I knew what the clientele were looking for, I knew who the audience would be, and as a young sculptor that wanted to make a statement wider than just one person's living room, I found it probably I put in way too many hours, and it wasn't paying its way early on, but it was a definite foot in. And the Art for Public Buildings 2% or whatever structure with the government was a big part of including such emerging artists as myself, and being able to see ourselves in a wider context, which really worked. So I worked for probably 8 or so years in outdoor public art around the Tasmanian public buildings. I found that I could work maybe 50% of my working year would be doing public buildings. So that's cast into the concrete of that structure. So the architect got me on board very early on, and it's a gymnasium, and these athletic figures are grappling with the zeros and ones that are floating through energy space, and so they're foreshortened. You've got huge toes, and then you've got tiny digits in the distance, and it's a completely three-dimensional field if you stand back. However, to look at that, it's actually 20 millimetres indentation into the flat concrete wall, so it was quite a quick casting system. It wasn't as though we had to do the negative of the form, which that photo would seem as though they read as they're coming out from the flat surface. So it's experimenting and learning and having help from architects as well as Arts Tasmania, and I felt like I was really being nurtured, and it has unfolded really well.
What was the process that you used?
I used polystyrene and surfboard. It wasn't exactly surfboard polystyrene, but it was similar in a 20mm sheet, and carved that, and then covered it with fiberglass enough to make it resistant to the concrete. So I could, once I had a sheet that was probably only that thick, and it, done all the different light relief tricks to the eye basically to get the foreshortening and such. Once I'd done that, I'd have this flat piece, and then I'd stick it down onto the casting bed of the precast concrete piece. So they're the tilt slab companies, and so you're going up to these guys in gumboots saying, well, here's my foreshortened figure, could you please? And that whole interface between a bad artist and surfboard maker, or somebody that's never done this before kind of guy, going into this whole warehouse situation of a precast concrete manufacturer and asking them for every little detail, and standing up as an artist and saying, hey, I'm in industry too, this is actually a growing part of the world. That's huge. As a little person, you don't know how to do it, and you say walk into this. I've certainly been in those environments before, but I've never been able to stand up and say I'm a sculptor, and have the conversation go from there. It's like, oh, sorry I asked. What does sculpture have in terms of the real world? In terms of making a living, making a quid or whatever we've been brought into. This is our legacy. We've got this whole structure of a community that still seems to think you've just got to do something repetitive, you've got to do it, it's got to be this volume-based industry, it's got to be something, and you never do a one-off on a big scale. And so this is like mid-2000s, I suppose, just talking to people on the local front saying, no, you've got to think one-off, you've got to take the joy of every day into your stride and get on with something special. Don't just think life is same and go and get drunk. So I felt like I went on like that, and I've sort of been saying imagination is the only way in the world, and then Mona came along and I'm like, oh. As well, you've got this like, are we going too far? So it's quite an interesting time for me, for my own personal experience, being able to stand up as a sculptor in the world and say, hey, it is actually real, not just my imagination. And this is huge, being able to say, and this is out front of Taruna High School now. You look at that and go, the digital age, zeros and ones, it's crazy, it's like a cracked vase, it's like a sprout, it's like whatever, and nobody can say what it is, but it's definitely there. And this is the realm that you're starting with young children, or adolescent children, saying, well, let's look at an imaginative vision of the planet, of existence, whatever. It's actually right out the front of your school. You walk past every day, you get off the bus and that, but it sort of niggles at you as well. So it's quite neat to, I feel.
What's the scale of that?
That's 6 metres high, I think. Sorry, it might only be 5, but it's 2.5 metres diameter at the top, so it's not huge. Yeah, and galvanised mild steel tube. The solids at the top, the one at the, it's all about 25mm square section, all that steel work. But when it comes down into the cast concrete section, it's more like flat bar. I think 6mm flat bar. And so I had the fiberglass form. You can imagine making that tube. It's got, or funnel, should I say, it's a fiberglass funnel that has just half, it's like two-part mould, and bolts together. But on the inside of that, I've got to try and form these steel pieces that embed into it. So I've got one half of that on a cradle, outside in my workshop, and then I'm beating steel in and welding it so that it'll be the right internal shape. It wants to hug this really well so that when the concrete gets poured into it under pressure, it's not going to sort of bleed in underneath the steel. And so I'm sort of welding small sort of location pins on the back of that bit of steel and shaping it, and it's actually floating, so how am I going to get that to sit separate? And so I've got to be welding other pieces, and MIG welding is wonderful. It sort of allows for even the amateurs to sort of get things to stick together. And I learned a lot through being at art school and experimenting there, and I've found that I can get hold of a machine if I need it, or buy a machine and do most parts, whether it's fiberglass or steel or concrete or anything. I'll just work with whatever I need for the concept to be able to be realised.
Did you have to polish that concrete?
No, it came off the cast. It was pretty well direct. Yeah, so it was a white Brighton concrete, little cement that they use and with light sand, and it pretty well came off directly. I think there was some silicon placed in between some of the galvanised steel pieces, because all that had to be welded and fitted to the inside of your fiberglass, and then taken away and galvanised. And so I brought it up from Hobart into the Launceston Prospect galvanising plant, and then had it all brought back down and put it back in, and then sent it down to the precasters into Electrona near Margate down south. And then inside those there was quite a bit of structure, of course, for the thinner section of the funnel to be structural to hold the wind loads, and so the engineering was in there as well. So, and then the base, of course, had mega amounts of concrete underneath it too. So Arts Tasmania were very helpful, and at times there's an architect or an engineer that they might suggest or whatever. And after time I fell out with Arts Tasmania Mega, and had a completely sad situation where one of the different people that might have been very supportive decided that they were going to impose funny restrictions on what the artist did, and so I'd say, hey, that public arts officer's not doing the right thing, and it would end up becoming quite a sort of problem for the poor little Marcus artist, and I haven't got another commission ever since, and it's all sort of, you grow through these things, and it's a part of your real life. There was a lot that I got from it. Not sure if this is working quite so well.
I think if you click the left button instead of scrolling.
Okay. Yeah. Oops. It seems to be jumping a bit, that arrow. All right, look, I'll
Do you want to go back now, or?
Yeah.
So, Damon,
That's a real life child in there, not one you've sculpted.
That's right, that's one of my 6-year-old, I think she was at the time. Yes. So I ended up I have 3 children, and we ended up, my wife works sometimes part-time as well, and yeah, so I think we're going forward still. But anyway, yeah, thanks. So I was in this situation where I was trying to make a living with sculpture. I was looking after my young one, or 2 at the time, and then I had, we lived in a sort of quiet place where we used the wood stove all the time for year round for heating the water and heating the house, and so I had to get lots of firewood going, and so that was where that photo of a little igloo type thing and the child in it came to. But just before I talk through that, this was a work that I took up to Bondi. 2004 was my first time of showing in Sculpture by the Sea. Went up to a stump. You can see how huge that stump is, and so I shaped a kind of a donut that's about 2 metres diameter, and then using a mill I sort of took off a 350 or 400 deep sort of donut, and then went down. I took 2 or 3 off that one, I think. Excuse me. Yeah, and that's how it ended up. Well, that's a digital rendition, and once again that was a big part of the Arts Tasmania influence on what I do. It was learning how to project your ideas really clearly through Photoshop, and discussing your proposal really clearly to begin with. And I hadn't learnt that at art school. I guess I graduated out of art school in 1989, so I suppose there was never going to be any sort of digital reference at that stage. But this is how I sell most of my work now. It's just picturing it. I'll make a model, I'll do something small, and then photograph it and cut it out and place it into whichever direction. And it's so useful for the curatorial element to picture it, see it. You can see I'm sort of fudging the ground and getting it's sort of. The architects will say, no, you've got to just have a stylised person, because everyone knows that it's just a picture. But I disagree with that architectural vision. It's a lot better to have it as a really clear, I am there, there's a bit of foreground right in the view, there's this whole feeling of experiencing it right on, as if you're right there, makes it really easier to sell work, to at least for people to picture it. So yeah, firewood became quite a big thing for me. I wasn't keeping up with it. We were trying to cook dinner for the kids by 5, and wood wouldn't burn. So this is what I started, and then I started recognising the value. This is from inside that area, and just seeing what firewood could do. And I just grew with it and took it further. And that became quite easy to do for me. I was just banging a huge pole in the ground. It was a pole from out in the bush, those clear felt curves, sticking it upside down, and then welding up some Rio into a sort of a curve, and then banging it all together, and a bit of fencing wire, let's go, clunk, 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 and it's trying to fall out. Well, I'll just stick another few staples in, and I was just practical, I guess, having that background of living on the land a bit, and then I just make stuff, and that'll show. This is at Werribee and the Helen Lempriere one year. That was great. These people came up and they said, "How much do you want for your work?" And I sold it on the spot, and I just felt like it was being well. I was finding the right sort of place for what I do. So that piece, again, Photoshopped, I took that up to Bondi. That was quite an epic thing. And this is where it started. So you can see a bit of a semicircle. I sort of carved a piece out of that tree, and I got quite a few of those 0 digits that were in that Photoshopped piece, digital integers. So I made zeros out of that. Isn't that just such a huge log? And that's lying there, it's already been weathered on the outside, you can see it's cracking. Somebody's been doing a bit of firewooding, and really it's just going to be wasted, so it's completely out of the way. I could just carve there for as long as I like. The old station wagon, and that was enough to keep the sun off, and a bit of a tarp. And so that log there is this section here. Is what I decided I'd take on that kind of form out of. That shows, you kind of open it up and you see if there's, a solid bit of wood in there, and you really don't know until you carve into it. You can't kind of impose your design onto a natural material, same as a stone carver can't really take on, something until they see the different faults and see the different intricacies of the particular piece. But on the day, you have a look and you see what you can do with it. And this is what I try and tell people who are makers, is just feel relaxed in your environment. Just get somewhere. Don't go to the beach and think, I'm going to do public art and do something and then walk off. Just live at the beach. Just stay there, And if you can actually arrange your life so that you don't have to go from somewhere for a long time, then the land will teach you as much as you'll be imposing upon it. You'll be imposed by the elements. And so that's my great secret, is just don't listen to what anyone else is saying, but just be in these places. It's so vital. Does anyone else like chainsaw fumes? Hasn't it affected me? Why? I need them.
It's your drug of choice.
So I was thinking about the hum, the noise. Do you have a tape of that on your MP3 like in your ears so you can sleep at night?
Yeah, I have worried about industrial deafness.
Oh no, well, don't worry about that, because I'm sure that you have all the public ear, but even still there's that hum. So like, can you actually sleep when you don't have that noise?
Yeah, I sleep like a baby out there. I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure I understand the question. It doesn't go on for me. I don't have a hum afterwards. Is that what you mean?
Oh no, I just thought you must go for like hours and hours and hours with that noise.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, you're right.
Quiet.
Yeah, no, it's not like you miss it. No. But I think that I get taken by it. Like I'm getting somewhere. I'm holding that, and I've got this kind of tenacious way about me. If I can't quite get that bit of wood loose, then I forget to eat, and it's already dark, and this is in the middle of summer, and it's 10 o'clock at night getting dark. It's already dark, and I haven't finished, and I'm sort of just driven, and yeah, I don't sort of think about too many other things except for, I think I'm very much project driven, and I'm noticing it more and more as I try and work with communities, that I'm not actually that good with other people. So we've just done Artentwine as the Waterlines project with the West Tamar Art Group, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that part of it, and we worked really well as a group towards some sculptural poles that are going to be on show down in the Museum and Art Gallery near Hobart, as a part of a greater regional initiative by Regional Tasmania. So there's 12 different regional groups around Tasmania all doing the work about water lines, and so West Tamar and the group here who have organised Artentwine have brought me on to do a workshop, and we worked for 3 days as a group and made these, conceived and worked on these different ideas about the health of the Tamar River and the waterways here, and what the process also quite interesting to look at it in reference to the Great Barrier Reef, and how the waterways are huge in each of our lives. We need their voice, and so this project has worked really well in terms of a wider community reference, or sort of a voice, isn't it, to say, yeah.
It's your choice.
Yeah, and that's what we've called it, navigate. It's like working with the navigation poles outside in the estuary here, and how we've got this choice where one navigation post is more positive than the other, but they're completely sculptural at the same time. So.
It looks great.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a good process, but having said that, I come from this situation of just I love making. I just have to get in and get my hands dirty and be in it. That certainly shows it, that slide there. So that's getting close. I needed to get it relatively thin, like I was saying, on those interior pieces, just to be able to hold in the structural integrity. These pieces of wood, if you kept that completely covered in plastic for 6 months, it would sweat slowly. And I learnt this through furniture design and also through percussion instrument making. You've got to let the wood, if you had a microwave big enough, you could kind of speed that up and within the internal wall of this piece of wood, you've got moisture inside. It's not going to pass out to the outside very quickly, and that's where, if it does, the outside cells will shrink, and 15% is a lot, and that 15% adds up tangentially, and so it becomes a, you know, very easy to crack kind of a form. But then what I do with this is cover it with a kind of a wax emulsion. It's like a paraffin wax that the logging industry use for sealing the ends of logs. And so that'll be sealed. Then I've built a chamber specifically to dry it in. So it's sort of like a checkerboard on the side there, passes air through into that chamber at a really slow and even rate for 4 months. I'll have that where it's like a big freezer, it's insulated, and so I've built that whole chamber just to dry this piece of wood, and I think that's just about, you can see the cracks on it on the outside that they've formed even though it's been in the kiln for 4 months, but it's still structurally intact, and that was the big issue, that, you know, you could easily, just depends on the particular log, whether it was growing on a lean, whether the soil was, you know, really fast growing soil, or whether this 400-year-old tree was you know, growing really slow early on, and so you don't know until you've tried this. Could easily have split open, and that's the same with the taiko drums for Synergy, whether, you know, that had split open. We weren't to know until we tried it and put it in the kiln. So yeah, that's going up to Sydney. Sorry.
Is that the one you have with you today?
No, that's 2006, this one. And I put it on a sort of a marble or granite kind of a base, and that's sort of what you pass on to the people that organise Sculpture by the Sea, to be able to get them to think that you're going to be able to you know, do the job when you're there. So yeah, I was really happy to have it there, and you know, I did get some notoriety just for sheer, like, what a huge piece of wood, and you know, that you don't know where the public are going to sort of really grab the concept that you're hoping to put forward. I call this trophy, as though, you know, aren't we all clever? We're so civilised, and you know, at the same time, just thinking, oh, what a waste of a big piece of wood. Let's revalue it somehow. Let's all do something that's a little bit more positive. And that ended up being on show up in North Head for a while. We put it on a bit of sandstone. It looked a bit more in keeping with the Sydney way. And yeah, still didn't sell that for ages, and ended up having to go and pick it up, take it back on the trailer, bring it back to Tasmania, and on the way I was dropping in to install a firewood sculpture down in Mornington Peninsula, and the guy said, oh, what's that on the back of your trailer? And, oh, well, actually I'm looking for a home for this, and he bought it off the back of the trailer. It was just after, like, that sculpture, that one that I hollowed out, like, that had been up to Sydney for Bondi, brought it back down to Tasmania, then they commissioned me to at least transport it back up to North Head, and then that wasn't for sale. They deliberated for so long as to whether they're going to sell it and buy it or not. So. And then on the way back with my tail between my legs the second time, I never sell sculptures, I'm sorry. You know, coming back to your family. It's a horrible life, actually, you know, when you don't sell these things. But he bought it, and so life is just so full of funny twists, really. As a sculptor, it's sort of an example.
How much time did you spend carving that big?
So that big one, I think, well, carving it was like a 3-week process to get it onto my trailer, so I could sort of, you know, get it into the workshop, and then it was about an 8 months or 9 months drying process and deciding whether I was going to finish it more than chainsaw finish it. And yeah, I think it was about a year, you could say, before it went to Bondi, and then once it was on show there, it was kind of finished. And yeah, so it's, yeah, they're always slow sort of gestations for most of my works. When they're one-offs, you don't quite know when they'll be finished. You kind of have 4 or 5 things that you're hoping to get done. Sorry, this one's another Bondi show piece. You can see the ground is absolutely white. And what was really good about this was that I finished it just on time. Like, we didn't realise we were going to have to use scaffold. We thought we were just going to climb, like I do at my workshop, just climb up with a load of firewood on your ladder and whack it on. And but then safety was becoming more and more part of it. So
are you actually building that on site?
That's right. So I just went from Hobart with some steel and some wooden main beams. So that steel structure came up on the trailer, and those steel beams that are wooden curved beams that are in the middle. And so from that drawing, basically, I've got the wood and the steel, and basically filled with gravel in the ground, just some bush poles, and that was fine. I was sort of accepted with that. But then when I got up to Bondi, they were saying, "Oh, I think you should use your scaffolding," and we got to do that, and it worked. I had 2 other people helping me, and we built it, and it was finished just about on the knocker in terms of the finishing time. You really can't tell how long something like this will take to make. But I managed to start talking about Humbaba and the story of Gilgamesh. That's one of the earliest known stories to humankind, where on these tablets they've inscribed in cuneiform language and in modern day about the way King Gilgamesh was being so popular, so proud. He ended up taking on this whole hillside of cedar, and he cut down these trees, and he started disrespecting the natural world. And it's like this whole window into what human culture was like, and I think it's 4000 BC, something way early, where you can see that we're still grappling with this exact same human condition, where we need resource and we need energy, but we also can't afford to wreck it, and we've got to revalue at least. And so this, to me, is quite a huge statement, and to be able to describe that story of Humbaba's. Humbaba was the natural side of, like, King Gilgamesh was the one that took on Humbaba and fought and dominated. So to me, the title of Humbaba's Barrel wasn't going to be accessible to the audience, to the public, but it was enough to lead in, and for me to be able to describe to the curatorial people about what this work meant. And it did. It just sang once you could see the firewood and everything else that kind of worked. So I bought that firewood from the local landscape suppliers in Sydney. It was, and then after the show, it wasn't likely to be a piece that would sell, but after the show I sold it back to the firewood people and said, it's got a lot of fencing staples in it, it's reused fences, and so they actually did on-sell it to the firewood industry. So I felt like, that's not too much of a huge footprint on that level.
Mark, it's just 5 minutes to go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's good. And that's me wanting to be able to create those. I haven't got to make those yet. Imagine the risks, public liability. We'll see where we go with that. But the zeros and ones, it's like I've got this kind of placement of us, our culture, our civilization in the public realm, thinking, if you've got to work out in the public, you are looking at the longer term, the frame of reference into decades. And so I work with several veins. I think, the digital vein is one sort of form that I really want to make indelible. Then there's the more Grecian urn type vein, and then firewood as well. There's such a strong reference to our daily life and our particular environmental issues now. That was in Aarhus in Denmark. That went very well with the Danish public. The firewood has been really fun to explore. I just love this photo. These people just not even referencing the sculptural specialness. It's just like, oh, we all lie around here. Why is the sculpture in the way? Just thought, it's classic. But that was pretty well a spiral that just wove in amongst the trees like that.
Where's that one?
Where is it?
Yeah.
Now.
Where was that?
Oh, that was at Cottesloe, Sculpture by the Sea. So yeah, Cottesloe, and then the streetscapes over here, and it's quite a big grassy foreshore, and then down onto the lawn, which is also dotted with about 70 or 80 different sculptors from other parts of the world. That was one of the last pieces I made with Arts Tasmania. They cut my budget by 30% as I was halfway through it. Telling stories now. So I just love to work in a real range. This was a lovely commission that worked out really well. So I worked with two other people. This is in Canberra now, and we were wanting to put a sculpture in there. I'll just run through it really quickly. So, and we might finish on this just to keep within time.
I have the fridge magnet. I liked the sculpture so much. I bought the fridge magnet. So thank you. I love
I don't suppose anyone can hear this.
Tatton started the work in Tasmania. It then travelled to Melbourne, where it was naturally rusted before finally being rolled into the capital.
He did it in Hobart, in his outdoor studio, using hundreds of metres of steel rod. Well, his artist's eye and the strength of his hands.
I think it's only natural in a place of what we anticipate to be a place of enormous beauty in years to come. I think they'll be to complement that works of beautiful art.
The installation shows the Owsley Arboretum is really taking shape. More than 50 of the 100 forests have now been planted. The Chief Minister says planning is underway for the next stages.
As we complete the planting of the trees, is to develop and put in some infrastructure, a cafe, restaurant, visitor centre, a children's playground, a zero-scape garden, other gardens, and a family centre.
Could it actually be news?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Marcus, is that at the Arboretum in Canberra?
National
We
Arboretum.
drive past it all the time and never bother to pop in. I will next time.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's nice and big, and you can see that the people are just using it. You know, the steel gets nicely patinaed along the way.
The art came first. The art came first there.
Yeah.
Before the other things that
Pretty
were
well.
out, which is a nice view.
Yeah, and I was worried that these trees are going to grow and take it off the landscape, and they're saying, well, yeah, some of the species will eventually, but they're very slow growing, the ones one's right near there, so it's probably just going to it will probably need moving as time goes on. But yeah, I've got a few more slides, but that's sort of a good place to finish, I think. And I wanted to say that I'm en route to Sculpture by the Sea again. Like the Sculptures by the Sea show's installing all this coming week, so I'm driving up on the back of my trailer. It's parked over there. It's a series of zeros and ones against steel ones, and I've just oriented them into a circle, so it'll be a bit like I'll pass this around as well. It'll be my daughter thinks it's a clock, and I say no, it's a hinge, and it's called The Message, and there's nothing more to my other statement except get the message. And it's going to be a meeting place of zeros and ones where people will be connecting, and I just think that it works as a statement to have these tangible references to what we're all doing, and I think it'll probably work out quite well sitting on Knight's Park. So that's what I'm pass it around, and taking that up there. I'll be on a ferry tonight and drive along. It's probably going to be rough as guts, I think. I don't know. The wind's dropped anyway. But yeah, that's what I do. I find Sculpture by the Sea is a huge boon to my career in terms of reaching an audience that's not down in way south of Tasmania, and that people are ready. People are loving to see sculpture there, and they come specifically to see the concept. And it's not just a pretty object. And I don't get the people saying, "Oh, how long does it take?" and "What wood is that?" People are just getting the imaginative realm, which is such a joy. And you see it more and more now, I think, in our wider culture. There's a readiness to take on that imaginative world. So, thank you.